When a teenage boy dove into the world of 8chan, he started going down a path that he could never return from. Taking inspiration from some of the most infamous criminals that made a name for themselves on the site, he decided that he couldn't see any other future for himself. Right now, I would like to thank the sponsor of today's video, Incogni. This is because lately I've been trying to find someone who can remove all of my data from all of these marketing databases that I've never consented to be on. It's still very hard to find a solid, definitive list of all of these different companies that take your data and spread it all over the internet. There have been numerous data breaches from different platforms over the years that have only little by little been adding to the problem. Requesting to be removed off of all of these could take you years to do manually. That's where Incogni comes in. You can just make an account on Incogni and they will send a data protection law compliance request to all of these different companies and demand that they remove all of your data from these different companies' databases. They will even handle any disputes that come back from them. The US in particular has a big data privacy problem, people search sites. These websites create detailed personal profiles of you and publish them online for anyone to see. This can expose you and your loved ones to anything from scams to identity theft to even online harassment and stalking. These companies have even taken out massive loans under these people's names without them even knowing it, only putting them into debt and ruining their credit. Cybercriminals from an underground platform called SSNDOB were even stealing social security numbers and other personal info from large data brokers like Dun & Bradstreet in order to steal their identities. It's crazy what they can get their hands on. Incogni's easy. Just make an account, give them the right to work on your behalf, and let them get to it. Take back your personal data today with Incogni. Just use my code DIRETRIP at incogni.com/diretrip and get 60% off an annual plan. Incogni is available risk-free for 30 days, so there's no harm in trying it out. This isn't the first time we've heard the story of a young man coming across sites like 8chan and going down a dark path, and in all likelihood it won't be the last. These days, killers are almost guaranteed to go on to inspire other killers in the way that they were inspired, especially given that online echo chambers are so prevalent. While previously people would just be told that these ideas were wrong, now they can go online and get unanimous support from a bunch of like-minded people right from their own computer. And unfortunately, that's how we get to today's case. John Timothy Ernest was born on June 8, 1999 in a San Diego neighborhood called Rancho Peñasquitos. Raised among his 5 other siblings, he was said to have been a very good kid. He began playing piano from the age of 4 and always excelled in school. When he became a teenager, he began to attend Mount Carmel High School in San Diego, where his father worked as an AP physics teacher and also as a sponsor of the Ham Radio Club. John's father was also an elder at their church, the Escondido Orthodox Presbyterian Church, where John also attended regularly. John later described himself by saying, "I'm just a normal dude who wanted to have a family, help and heal people, and play piano." At school he was known for his intelligence, his athletic ability, and his skill on the piano. His classmates have since said that he was so smart that he didn't have to take notes in his advanced placement classes, instead attending class while listening to music, but still acing every test with little to no effort. He swam for the varsity team as well as the dive team. At the talent show near the end of high school, he played a Pirates of the Caribbean medley on his piano and shocked the audience with how good he was. In high school, he was said to have been very quiet, but also had friends of all different races and religions, including Jews. John eventually came to graduate from Mount Carmel in 2017 when he was accepted into Yale. Interestingly enough, he chose not to attend Yale and instead entered into the California State University San Marcos, the North San Diego County campus to be specific. He decided to pursue a career in nursing, becoming a promising student who made the dean's list almost immediately. John had never had any sort of contact with the police in his life, having a squeaky clean record. He was never even known to hang around any shady individuals either. He really was the model kid, but that wouldn't last. When John turned 18, he started to venture into the seedier sides of the internet. In around October of 2018, he started frequenting both 4chan and 8chan, taking more of an interest in 8chan in particular. 8chan is a controversial image board website to say the least, one in which many people have been radicalized in various ways in the past. The board is known for being the place where many mass shooters have posted their manifestos before carrying out their crimes. In late 2018, John decided to show a few classmates at his school and a few family friends what he had been reading up on. It has been said that he sent various videos to them, videos that have been described as both anti-Semitic and anti-immigration. Getting a bit of a cold, kind of non-response from them, he decided instead to show the material to a few other classmates. John even attended a holiday party with some of these other students in which he started basically coming up with a race tier list, ranking different races from worst to best. Two of these students found his new views to be a red flag and decided to report the whole thing to a professor. This professor then pushed the report up the university chain of command. In the end, even the university police were involved. However, given that John hadn't really actually issued some sort of threat and had never shown any signs of violence, there wasn't much that the police could do. After all, he was doing nothing more than expressing his political views, as displeasing as they may have been. After months of browsing 8chan, John would come to hear of an incident that would change his life forever. John heard the story of Brenton Tarrant, the Christchurch mosque shooter. Brenton had spoken of defending the white race and preventing their extinction in his manifesto. Despite having friends of all different backgrounds before, this really spoke to John. He downloaded and read through Brenton's manifesto, taking in every word. He kept a copy of the writing on his hard drive to go over time and time again. Now 19 years old and thoroughly invested in his new views, John decided that he needed to do something for himself as well. He decided that he needed to carry out some sort of attack, and for his first target he felt that there would be nothing better than a mosque, much like his idol had chosen. On March 24, 2019, John made his way out to his target, the Dur al-Arqam Mosque in Escondido, California. Located north of downtown San Diego, this was a mosque that had been converted from a church in the past. A security camera at the mosque showed John breaking the lock on the parking lot gate and moving towards the building. While Brenton Tarrant seemingly planned to burn down some of the mosques on his list, he didn't end up doing it for whatever reason. John, though, was determined to make it work. John decided to write some graffiti in support of his idol. On the ground, he wrote, "For Brenton Tarrant, T/Pol." /Pol was the political board of 8chan, where both of them had learned a lot of their views. John then began to pour a flammable liquid all over the outside of the mosque before setting it alight. 7 people were inside the mosque at the time of the attack, but only one of them was awake. He woke the others once he started to smell the smoke. Before too long, the fire was getting out of control. The people inside tried to put it out, but they weren't having any success. Someone outside noticed the fire and called 911 themselves. Eventually, the firefighters came out and extinguished the fire before any major damage was done. In the end, nobody was hurt in the incident. The police decided not to report what exactly the graffiti had said, likely hoping to prevent more copycat attacks. Instead, they only told news media that it was something inflammatory against Muslims. It wasn't until internet users obtained the crime scene photos from a FOIA request later on that the true nature of the graffiti was known. The San Diego County Sheriff's Bomb/Arson Unit, the FBI, and the ATF started to investigate the fire as both a case of arson and a hate crime. Due to the Brenton Tarrant reference, they began to look at the fire as likely a case of terrorism. A spokesperson for the Islamic community in Escondido told local Muslims in the area to remain cautious. It was asked that the police increase their security around other mosques in the area as well. The mosque tried to crowdfund some donations in order to repair the fire damage, but it wasn't successful. It only earned about a fourth of its goal. In the end, the police had no idea who to look for. The security camera footage never gave a clear view of their suspect. Even if they had some ideas in mind, John wouldn't have been anywhere near their radar. He had no connection to the mosque, he had no criminal record, and he seemed to be a stand-up young man. It's very likely that evading the police this easily after committing his crime only emboldened John that much more. Soon after, he began to plot his next move. Dodging both the arrest and discipline from his university, John was feeling pretty invincible. He felt that even if he committed some sort of similar attack again, he probably wouldn't even be caught. After all, he had just gotten away with it once without ever even being questioned. Taking a page out of Brenton Tarrant's book, he decided that he would follow him in yet another way, by writing his own manifesto. A short while after his attack on the mosque, John sat down at his computer and began to write. While he had attacked the mosque before, he didn't actually seem to hold that much animosity towards Muslims. That attack had likely been more of a tribute to Brenton Tarrant as well as a trial run. John actually hated one group much more than any other, that being Jews. In his manifesto, which he titled An Open Letter, John decided to detail his reasons for hatred towards Jews and detail why exactly he wanted to attack them. As the introduction of the manifesto, John briefly explains his ancestry. He opened with, My name is John Ernest, and I am a man of European ancestry. The blood that runs in my veins is the same that ran through the English, Nordic, and Irishmen of old. He then details how he was a descendant of John Ernest, one of the original settlers of the Roanoke colony. He then says, "From my mother's side I inherited the blood of very wealthy Yankees, intelligent, resourceful, uncompromising. From my father's side I inherited the blood of poor southern farmers, intelligent, musically gifted, self-sufficient. A part of my ancestors lives within me in this very moment. They are the reason I am who I am. Their acts of bravery, ingenuity, and righteousness live on through me. Truly I am blessed by God for such a magnificent bloodline." It is then that John begins to preemptively answer questions that he predicted would be asked after he carried out his attack. He explains that nothing was more important to him than the European race and his bloodline, saying that he couldn't stand by while knowing that he didn't do anything to stop the Jews. He says that the Jews were plotting the doom of his race, adding, "I willingly sacrifice my future, the future of having a fulfilling job, a loving wife, and amazing kids. I sacrifice this for the sake of my people, our people. I would die 1,000 times over to prevent the doomed fate that the Jews have planned for my race." He further explains what exactly he felt the Jews were doing in clear language. He says that they lie and deceive the public by controlling the news media, that they use usury and banks to enslave entire nations to fund their evil, that they started countless wars on the foundation of lies, and that they pushed communism, feminism, and pornography. Those weren't even near the end of John's complaints. He also states that they vote for and fund politicians who push mass immigration, that they have a bloody history of genocidal behavior, that they have persecuted Christians throughout history, and finally that they had killed Jesus Christ. John then states that he is taking part in a revolution, one that he says contains 3 types of people: those who spread the truth, those who defend the race, and those who continue the race by having more kids. He says that he doesn't care too much about the high score that he will achieve, but is happy that he will be sending at least some Jews to hell. He says that his main goal is to inspire others to commit an attack like him. John then speaks about his faith in Christianity while adding that he didn't necessarily believe in love thy enemy. He says that this rule has been twisted and shouldn't apply to self-defense. He says the Jews have forced his hand, adding, "My God understands why I did what I did," before listing out a series of Bible verses that he felt proved the Jews were beyond saving. However, he then, trolling, posts a quote from Skyrim. Continuing down the road of trolling, he then posted what he said was a message for any Jews or government agents reading, that he had planned the attack together with a man named Felix Avrid Ulf Kjellberg. For those who don't know, that is the real name of the YouTuber named PewDiePie. This line was in reference to the Christchurch mosque shooting, when the shooter, Brenton Tarrant, uttered the line "subscribe to PewDiePie" during the livestream of his attack and stirred up a good bit of media controversy. He then says that the idea that government agents lurking on places like 8chan is only a lie meant to prevent retaliation against the Jews. He then, in a surprising twist, fully confesses to the Escondido mosque fire, saying, "I scorched a mosque in Escondido with gasoline a week after Brenton Tarrant's sacrifice and they never found shit on me. I didn't realize sand, in words, were sleeping on the inside though. They woke up and put out the fire pretty much immediately after I drove away, which was unfortunate. Also, they didn't report the message I spray painted in the parking lot. I wrote, for Brenton Tarrant, T/Pol. He then tells his readers on 8chan, who he calls Anons, that this was very easy and that they too could carry out similar attacks. He even explained a few methods on how to do so. He then explains that the perpetrator of the Pittsburgh Synagogue shooting, Robert Bowers, and Brenton Tarrant were his biggest inspirations. He wrote, "Meme Robert Bowers back and keep up the memes of Brenton Tarrant. Tarrant was a catalyst for me personally. He showed me that it could be done, and that it needed to be done. Brenton Tarrant inspired me. I hope to inspire many more. I remember a specific moment in time after Brenton Tarrant's sacrifice that something just clicked in my mind. If I won't defend my race, how can I expect others to do the same? I immediately got to planning, and I never looked back." It was then that John professed his hatred for Donald Trump, saying, "You mean that Zionist, Jew-loving, anti-white, traitorous cocksucker? Don't make me laugh," before adding that his only political ideology is, in his words, not going extinct. He says that he is not a conservative, writing, "I am not a useless, spineless coward, so no, I am not a conservative." He also states that he is not mentally ill. When it comes to the subject of whether or not he learned this from his parents, he adamantly denies having heard it from either of them, almost as if he were disappointed in them for not instilling those values, stating, "Unfortunately, no. I had to learn what they should have taught me from the beginning." When it comes to what would happen after the attack, John writes, "And when this revolution starts gaining traction, if I am not killed, I expect to be freed from prison and continue the fight. I do not seek fame. I do not seek power. I only wish to inspire others and be a soldier that has the honor and privilege of defending his race in its greatest hour of need, and have a family if possible." Toward the end of the manifesto, John praises the Anons of the poll board on 8chan, saying, "To the true Anons out there, you know who you are. You are the product of poll, the product of unadulterated truth. You are my brothers and the best dudes out there. You are the most honorable men of this age. Despite all odds against you, you not only discovered the truth but also helped to spread it." Feeling that the other users of 8chan would soon rise up and continue this war after he finished his own attack for sure, John ends the manifesto with, "More than anything, I wish I could have seen your faces and fought alongside you on the battlefield. Give them hell for me. Give them hell." On April 16th, 2019, John got himself a hunting license, likely to throw off suspicions with his next purchase. 10 days later, on April 26th, John made his way out to a local gun shop simply called San Diego Guns on Mission Gorge Road. He bought himself a Smith & Wesson Model M&P 15 Sport II semi-automatic rifle, 5 10-round magazines, and a tactical vest. This all cost him $963.41. Now he was ready to carry out an attack just like his idols, and rather than being nervous, he was actually excited. It had been about a year and a half since he started developing this new ideology, and he decided that he couldn't wait any longer. The next day would be the day. April 27th, 2019. It was now the morning of when John would carry out his attack. Just after 9 a.m., he uploaded his manifesto to the internet for the first time. Then at around 10 a.m., he logged on to 8chan. There, using his real name instead of posting anonymously, he posted a link to his manifesto as well as his Facebook page, saying that a live stream was coming. The post that John made was very similar to the post that Brenton Tarrant made before his attack. It even used the same websites, Pastebin and Mediafire, that Brenton used to host his manifesto as well. In the post, John wrote, "It's been real, dudes. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for everything. Keep up the infographic red pill threads. I've only been lurking for a year and a half, yet what I've learned here is priceless. It's been an honor. Livestream link is below as well as my open letter. Livestream will begin shortly." After posting the links, he posted a list of what he called memeable songs. He ended his post by saying, "Meme magic is real. May the Lord Christ be with you all." Shortly after the post was made, other users on 8chan began to egg him on, with the very first response saying, "Based, get a high score." The post would be taken down about 9 minutes later, but not before it was screenshotted and noticed by concerned viewers. Shortly after it was made, a Twitter user asked how they could report the post to the FBI. They did so at around 11:15 a.m., telling the agency that this poster had admitted to the Escondido mosque fire within their manifesto and that, from the wording, it was clear that a shooting was coming. The post itself didn't include any hint as to where the attack might take place. The FBI also failed to notice that John had used his real name to post the thread, instead rushing to determine who had written the post in other ways. Unfortunately, they wouldn't have enough time to figure any of that out. John, driving down the road, began to approach his target, an area where he knew that a good numbers of Jews would be congregating, the Chabad Poway Synagogue, about 25 miles north of San Diego. That day, which was the Sabbath, the congregation was holding a Passover celebration event that started at 11 a.m. About 100 people were there celebrating at the time. 60-year-old Lori Gilbert Kay, a congregation member, and her daughter entered into the building together, climbing up the steps. Lori then gave her a hug. While her daughter sat down in the pews, Lori stayed outside in the lobby. John pulled up in his car, parking on the side of the road across the street. He began to set up a live stream on his Facebook page, much like Brenton Tarrant had done before him. However, also much like many other shooters before him, he failed in setting up the live stream properly, never even broadcasting it in the first place. Nevertheless, he picked up his gun from the passenger seat of his car and began to move towards the building. Just before 11:30 a.m., less than 15 minutes since the police began looking into his 8chan post, John entered into the synagogue. Holding his rifle and wearing his vest, he burst through the front door and began to shout slurs at the 40 or so people who were within view. Quickly, he shouted that Jews were ruining the world. Before anyone could collect themselves and react, he opened fire. He shot twice towards Lori, who put herself between the rabbi and the gunman, ending her life on the spot. He then moved his aim towards the rabbi of the synagogue, Rabbi Israel Goldstein. The rabbi made an attempt to run into the side room, but John shot him down as well. John, still standing in the lobby, aimed towards the main prayer hall in which many people were now hiding. He fired several more shots, hitting one man in the leg and injuring his young niece with the shrapnel. Then John was hit with a bit of a shock. His rifle had jammed. Unsure of how to proceed, he started to leave, walking back towards his car. It was then that one member of the congregation, a 51-year-old electrician named Oscar Stewart, collected himself. He later said, "People were falling all over each other. It was chaos. I screamed to everyone, 'Get down, get out here.'" Believing that John was leaving to reload, he almost decided to run away. Instead, feeling a sense of duty, he decided to take this chance. Oscar ran straight towards John. Having served in the Persian Gulf War as a Navy bomb disposal expert, he had a good deal of combat training under his belt. He said, "I told him I was going to kill him. I screamed it really loud. I kept screaming at him." Seeing this man coming towards him and knowing that his gun wasn't working, John nearly jumped out of his shoes and started sprinting towards his car. Oscar chased him across the street. When John got into his car, Oscar started pounding his fist on the side of the vehicle. He was mainly worried that John planned on attacking the church next door or the grocery store a few doors down. Little did either of them know, an off-duty Border Patrol agent at the service that day had left and returned with his own gun. He told Oscar to move out of the way and took aim at John's car. John slammed on the accelerator, peeling out into the road. The agent fired about 5 rounds towards John's car as he drove away in a frenzy. John, uninjured, continued to speed away. The men returned to the synagogue and began to survey the damage. They checked on the rabbi, who was alive but bleeding profusely from his hands. He spoke to the remaining congregation members despite his injury, telling them to stay strong. They tried to perform CPR on Lori Kay, but she had already passed. Lori's husband came into the lobby and found her, where he let out a groan and passed out from the shock. It wasn't long before ambulances were on the scene. Luckily, aside from Lori, everyone else in the synagogue was expected to recover. John was now about 2 miles away from the site of the crime, driving down the road in his Honda. In a move that nobody expected, John decided to call 911 and report the attack to the police himself. This wasn't due to any sort of guilt, but instead because he wanted to get his story out there before being arrested. Opening with, "I just shot up a synagogue," he told the police that he would stop his car, pull over, and exit without his weapons once they found him. Once the police cars came into sight, he pulled over. To his surprise, the cops simply went past him. He then relayed this to the dispatcher. He took this time to explain that he did all of this to defend his race from the Jews.
"I'm defending my nation against the Jewish people who are trying to destroy all white people. I opened fire at a synagogue. I think I showed some people another man returned fire with a pistol. Some got up, didn't hit me at all. Put back in my car, drove away. Because the Jewish people are destroying the white race. They have been for a long time. No one's doing anything about it. Something has to be done. I'm just trying to defend my nation from the Jewish people. They're destroying our people. I'm trying to show them that we're not going to go down without fighting."
The dispatcher on the other end repeatedly asked John the same questions, such as his name, which street he was on, which direction his car was facing, and what he was wearing. After being asked the same questions over and over again, John became irritated at how long this was taking. He began to explain to the police that he felt that they were fighting for the wrong side.
"That's exactly the wrong side. You're going to fight the wrong people, right? You're serving a government that's going to come on you."
Eventually, during the call, John remarked that he could see an officer approaching. This officer began to shout at him when John ended the call. He exited his car and surrendered, just as he said he would, and the police arrested him without a struggle. It was reported that he showed no emotion as the police took him into custody. John asked the officer, who was white, "How's your day going?" to which the officer responded, "Shit." John then asked him if he knew what the Jews were doing to their race. The police made their way over to his car and found his rifle, a helmet, and several magazines that were still fully loaded. Meanwhile, back at the synagogue, several police cars were parked just outside. They began to put up crime scene tape all around the building and out into the street. It was confirmed that Lori Gilbert Kay had died while Rabbi Yisrael Goldstein had been shot in the hands, 43-year-old Almog Peretz had been shot in the leg, and his 8-year-old niece, Noya, had been injured by some bullet shrapnel. All 4 were sent to the Palomar Health Medical Center Hospital. John himself was charged with 1 count of murder and 3 counts of attempted murder. At the young age of 19, his life was now as good as over. Rabbi Goldstein was in the hospital undergoing surgery for the wounds of his hands. In the end, he ended up losing his right index finger despite 4 hours of surgery attempting to fix it. Almog and Noya were recovering in the hospital, where it was said that they were in stable condition and expected to make a full recovery. When the dust settled, the synagogue held a memorial service for Lori Kay, remembering her for her kindness. Even at the end, she took a bullet for the rabbi. The police were still dealing with John T. Ernest. They were surprised to see that he had no sort of criminal record whatsoever, never having even the slightest contact with the police in his life. They also found that he had no connections to any sort of white nationalist groups either, concluding that he had acted alone of his own volition. Shortly after the shooting, a bunch of John's sympathizers took to his Facebook page, praising him for what he had done. Facebook removed John's profile where he had attempted to livestream the shooting, even though it hadn't been successful, likely due to his profile only seeming to inspire more people like him. The president at the time, Donald Trump, who John reviled, offered his sympathies to the families affected by the shooting. He said, "Our entire nation mourns the loss of life, prays for the wounded, and stands in solidarity with the Jewish community. We forcefully condemn the evil of anti-Semitism and hate, which must be defeated." He offered his condolences on Twitter as well, and praised the Border Patrol agent who tried to take John down. At a press conference, Rabbi Goldstein asked for the people to battle darkness with light. He urged that the U.S. call a moment of silence in public schools. More than the people who didn't actually know John, the people who knew him the best, his parents, were shocked beyond belief. John had successfully hidden his views from them for all of this time, knowing that they definitely wouldn't approve of how he was thinking. They decided to release a statement to the public. His parents wrote, "We are shocked and deeply saddened by the terrible attack on the Chabad of Poway Synagogue. But our sadness pales in comparison to the grief and anguish our son has caused for so many innocent people. He has killed and injured the faithful who are gathered in a sacred place on a sacred day. To our great shame, he is now part of the history of evil that has been perpetrated on the Jewish people for centuries. Our son's actions were informed by people who we do not know and ideas we do not hold. Like our other 5 children, he was raised in a family, a faith, and a community that all rejected hate and taught that love must be the motive for everything we do. How our son was attracted to such darkness is a terrifying mystery to us, though we are confident that the law enforcement will uncover many details of the path that he took to this evil and despicable act. To that end, our family is cooperating with investigators. We only ask that the media and the public respect our privacy and allow the criminal justice system to work. Our heavy hearts will forever go out to the victims and survivors. Our thanks to the first responders who prevented even greater loss of life and the well-wishers who have supported us. And we pray for peace." As they said, John's family cooperated fully with the investigators. Police gathered outside the family home, waiting on the search warrants that they would need to enter the house. It seems that the family let them in voluntarily before that. John's church was similarly distraught at what he had done. They were both shocked and horrified that one of their own could be capable of something like this. The pastor held a discussion shortly after the attack, saying that he would make an effort to support the synagogue in any way that he could. It wasn't until a few days later that he read through John's manifesto, stunned at what he had written. He read through it over and over again, trying to comprehend it. It was made worse by the fact that John did seem to have a good knowledge of Christianity, being able to convincingly twist Bible verses to fit his narrative. The pastor said, "It certainly calls for a good amount of soul-searching. We can't pretend as though we didn't have some responsibility for him. He was radicalized into white nationalism from within the very midst of our church." The Orthodox Presbyterian Church issued a statement, saying, "We deplore and resist all forms of anti-Semitism and racism. We are wounded to the core that such an evil could have gone out from our community. Such hatred has no place in any part of our beliefs or practices, for we seek to shape our whole lives according to the love and gospel of Jesus Christ." Adding that, the anti-Semitism and racist hatred which apparently motivated the shooter have no place within our system of doctrine. John's manifesto, which had already been spread far and wide, started a bit of debate on social media among Christian pastors. Many were concerned that John could so easily speak of love and salvation while at the same time harboring such intense hatred. Most of them came to deny that the theology or the Bible provided any sort of support for anti-Semitism. John, at his first hearing, decided to plead not guilty to all of the charges against him. He said that he wasn't acting in an aggressive manner, but instead this was all done for the sake of defense. He said, "I'm defending our nation against the Jewish people, who are trying to destroy all white people." John was still facing 1 count of murder and 3 counts of attempted murder, but now the charges were upgraded to include hate crime and gun allegations as well, leaving him open to even more severe penalties. These charges, especially those for killing someone for practicing their religion, could even get him hit with the death penalty. Soon after, John was also hit with charges relating to the arson on the Escondido Mosque. John still maintained that he wasn't guilty, showing zero remorse. He was ordered to be held without bail. The next month in May, things were actually looking even worse for John. Now, in addition to the original charges, he was being hit with federal charges as well, 109 of them to be exact. You had 54 counts of obstruction of free exercise of religious beliefs using a dangerous weapon resulting in death, both bodily injury and attempts to kill, 54 counts of hate crimes under the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act, and 1 count of damage to a religious property using fire for the arson case. John's parents, disgusted with him, declined to provide a lawyer for him. Instead, he would be represented by a public defender. In December of 2019, a street in Poway was renamed to Lori Lynn Lane in order to honor Lori's life. The California state legislature also passed a bill to establish a nonprofit security program which would award $200,000 a year to different religious, political, and mission-based institutions. The state allocated a whopping $12 million to the program. Also in December, the court announced that John's trial would begin on June 2, 2020. However, due to the outbreak of COVID and the announcement that the district attorney would be seeking the death penalty, the trial was delayed by quite a bit. It was soon announced that the trial wouldn't take place until, at the very least, March 15th of 2021. Many of the victims in the shooting decided to file a lawsuit against multiple parties. One was the manufacturer of John's gun, Smith & Wesson. They accused them of negligence in marketing the gun, which was a semi-automatic rifle that could be easily modified to fire automatically. Another target in the lawsuit was San Diego Guns, the shop that sold the weapon to John. Surprisingly, the synagogue itself was also listed in the lawsuit, citing their overly lax security. And finally, John's parents were also targeted. John's parents soon reached a settlement within their own lawsuit. It's unknown what kind of money they paid out or what the terms of the settlement were. John's trial didn't actually start until July 20th of 2021. By now, he had changed his mind and chose to plead guilty to the charges against him. Again, this wasn't due to any feelings of guilt. It was because if he did so, he would likely be spared the death penalty. In addition, John's attorneys urged the court to let him be housed in California more close to his home, saying that it would allow him to visit with his family much more easily, saying that it can, quote, ultimately help him continue the path of reconciliation and redemption. They added that, at this point, John was actually remorseful and that he had condemned his own actions. They blamed the crime mostly on online radicalization, saying that John was well on his way to leading a productive, meaningful, and lawful life before he started frequenting 8chan. They said, the online world that John Ernest looked to for these self-identifying answers ultimately consumed him, leading to this tragic end. Then came the next major day of the trial, September 30th, 2021. On this day, many of the victims in John's crime, as well as their families, came out to the court to provide their victim statements. Many of them recalled their memories of Lori Kay, saying that she often stood in the lobby of the synagogue and greeted other members. None of them spoke about her quite as much as her own daughter, Hannah Kay. Hannah was barely able to compose herself when she came up to the stand. She opened up her laptop and read a statement that she had written about how close she was to her mother. She said that she was grateful to attend the hearing and that her mother had taught her that gratitude. She thanked the prosecutors, the medics, and the investigators as well. Many others who were at the synagogue that day either described their injuries or their memories of Lori as well. One described seeing her on the floor as her husband desperately tried to revive her. They all spoke to John's back as he refused to turn around. Many of them asked how someone so young and inexperienced had even developed that level of hatred. They said that he had so many opportunities to change his mind that morning and still chose to continue the attack. They didn't get the answers they were looking for. John, now 22 years old, was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In addition, he was given an additional 121 years to life as well as another 16 years on top of that. A few months later, he was sentenced on the federal level as well, getting himself another sentence of life in prison without parole and an additional 30 years. His life sentences were set to run one after another rather than concurrently. He was all set to spend the rest of his life in federal custody. Things were quiet for a little while, that is, until more charges started to pop up. This time though, they weren't for John, they were for one of the victims in the case. Rabbi Yisrael Goldstein was found to have been engaging in some less than legal activity himself throughout his entire career, ever since the 80s. It was found that he had collected over $6.2 million in fake donations to both the synagogue and its affiliates. He was running a scheme where he would return 90% of the money to the contributors with fake receipts, making it so they could deduct the full amount from their taxes while barely losing any money. Then, the rabbi himself would keep the remaining 10% for himself, netting over $600,000. It was also found that he had taken over $185,000 from the Federal Emergency Management Agency and the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services with fake invoices related to the 2007 wildfires. He also managed to get payouts for damage from an earthquake that never even occurred. Not only that, he also helped his brother, Mendel Goldstein, to hide $700,000 from the IRS by letting him deposit money into the synagogue's bank accounts. The rabbi then took $70,000 as his cut for letting him do so. After pleading guilty to the charges of wire and tax fraud, Rabbi Goldstein was ordered to pay $2.8 million in restitution. Disgustingly, he brought up Lori's name and spoke of his grief for her in order to garner sympathy. Lori's daughter, Hannah, was appalled. She called this another exploitative, manipulative tactic to make himself out to be a victim. She then revealed that, since these financial dealings came to be clear, the congregation had begun to see the rabbi as partially responsible for Lori's murder. Goldstein had always told the congregation that they were merely a small synagogue with no money and that they couldn't afford any sort of security. Meanwhile, in the background, he was collecting fat checks left and right. Hannah ended with, "The community is ravaged. The community is deceased." The rabbi asked for house arrest in order to save his good name and prevent further shock to his congregation. He didn't get that wish. He was sentenced to 14 months in a federal prison for his scheme. Now, some of the congregation members are suing him as well over his misappropriation of the funds and their donations. The synagogue is now run by the rabbi's son, but it seems to be only a shell of its former self. It really goes without saying that Rabbi Goldstein's actions didn't really do anything to help with the growing anti-Jewish sentiment. If anything, they rapidly drained a lot of sympathy that people previously had for the synagogue. Especially among John's online followers, these actions only worked as a giant "I told you so" after everything came to light. To this day, John T. Ernest is still in federal prison. Through an old friend, he attempted to send a letter to the San Diego Union Tribune. In this letter, he said that he would like to publicly repent for the attack, saying that it was his religious imperative to do so. However, the Union Tribune noted that the letter still contained several references to both white supremacist and anti-Semitic views. Feeling that John hadn't actually changed at all, they refused to publish the statement. John will likely never achieve the redemption he's looking for. Once again, thank you for watching my video. If you found it interesting, please give it a like, it really helps me out in the algorithm, and feel free to subscribe if you want to see more content like this. I now have a merch store, there you can get yourself some cool Dire Trip t-shirts and lots of other stuff too. If you want, go ahead and follow me on social media. If you need to get a hold of me for anything, that's by far the easiest way. I also really appreciate when people subscribe to my Patreon. There you can get videos early, ad-free, and uncensored. Channel memberships are up too, and you can get the same benefits there as well. Once again, this has been your host Kyle. Thank you, and good night.